places, to share stories and photographs from the creepy side of global travel. We're going to several nerve-wracking destinations that I've personally visited in my 15 years of professional travel. And at the end, I'm going to share a real ghost story with actual physical evidence that continues to haunt me to this day. Now, due to the nature of Halloween and the content to follow, I must warn those of you who are sensitive to spooky, surprising, weird, and gross content. This is not just another Zoom call, people, I promise. Because as I cover both hallowed and not so holy ground, it's my goal to make your jaw drop, your nerves twang, to inspire your Halloween dinner conversation and have your imagination reaching for a chainsaw. So let's put the coffee cauldron on the boil and proceed with caution. Now, the concept of visitors from the afterlife is synonymous with Halloween. And despite some films that paint ghosts out to be hunky and healthy and inexplicably drawn to baseball fields and sexy pottery wheels, the rising dead are going to look like skeletons, Patrick Swayze included. But what if the bones aren't exactly where we left them? We start our journey at a small little church in the rural countryside of the Czech Republic. Now, sometime in the 13th century, a popular Bohemian monk brought back some holy sand from his pilgrimage to Jerusalem. And he sprinkled this magical dust around the church, and suddenly everybody who's anybody in Bohemia wanted to be buried there. Tens of thousands of corpses, all decomposed to the bone, flooded the tiny church. And the monks gathered these human remains and they put them in an ossuary, which is a word for a bone room. And hundreds of years later, with bones piled from floor to ceiling, a local woodcarver decided to get a little bit more creative with the surplus skeletons. Using the bones of 40,000 people, he's created wall art and displays and pillars and even a chandelier made with every bone in the human body. And today you can visit this gruesome work at the Sedlec Ossuary, marveling at this morbid creativity and learn that the hip bone is not always connected to the thigh bone. Now, ossuaries are not at all unusual. Bones are piled high and wide in ossuaries in Europe and even in South America. The skull and bones of some 70,000 people are wonderfully arranged beneath the Franciscan monastery in Lima, the capital of Peru. This lovely yellow-tinted monastery is actually a major tourist attraction. So it's kind of strange that everybody forgot about the catacombs for hundreds of years until they were rediscovered in the 1940s. And the air is dark and thick and dusty, and I had to remind myself that every skull there was a person with hopes and dreams. And you know, nobody wants to be just another bone in the wall. Now, over to Lalibela, northern Ethiopia. This is a remarkable town that's home to a collection of incredible 11th century rock churches. You know, carved into solid rock, these incredible rock churches just make mincemeat of this idea that Africa was a dark continent. In fact, there were many thriving, advanced civilizations centuries before Europeans arrived. I mean, Africa was amazing. And Lalibela is a perfect example. Now, they also had pilgrims who went to Jerusalem. Ethiopia adopted Christianity in the 4th century. So pilgrims would go to Jerusalem, they'd come back, and to honor them, well, the people in Lalibela did what they did. They drilled a hole into the wall and they just chucked their bones and their clothes in there when the pilgrims died. And today, when you walk around these rock churches, you can still see the corpses and the human remains a millennium later. Now, look, there are also bone ossuaries in Poland and Austria, in Spain and Portugal, tens of thousands of ex-people living on in a rather morbid, unexpected way. But if you want to catch the metro to Bone Skull Central, look no further than Gay Paris. That's right. In the 1600s, as Paris began to evolve from a backwater settlement into a major urban center, the few cemeteries it had were overrun with corpses. Life expectancy and cremation just wasn't a thing back then. So what's a city to do when the bodies just keep piling up? Well, what about dumping the remains along the 200 miles of tunnels that snake beneath the boulevards. These tunnels are what remains of the limestone that was mined and quarried to build the city above. So authorities in the 17th century reasoned, hey, these cold, dark passageways would be an ideal home for the city's inconveniently crowded dead. So over the course of 12 years, they dug up all the cemeteries and brought all the bones down into the tunnels. They only quit dumping bones about a century later, actually, but not before the remains of 6 to 7 million people had been exhumed and buried and arranged in the Paris catacombs. And you can see just a fraction of this on a 45-minute public tour that only explores about 1 mile of the 200-mile catacombs. I mean, it's staggering. The rest of the catacombs are illegal to explore, though that doesn't stop ambitious YouTubers and their surfboards. Anyway, the next time you're in the City of Lights, spare a thought for the millions of souls preserved beneath your feet. Now, there were no morbid package tours in the paradise that make up the Pacific's Cook Islands. Usually I talk about the squeaky white beaches, the infinity pools, the incredible turquoise waters. But today I'm reminded of my visit to a small island where a farmer gave me a headlight and said, hey, let's go check out one of the local burial caves. You see, for centuries, intertribal warfare was a very common thing in this part of the world. On some Pacific islands, eating the dead and sometimes the living allowed the victors to symbolically ingest the spirit of the enemy. On this particular island, once they'd done that, they chucked the bodies down into a cave, which is how I came face to face with this unfortunate fella who clearly received a nasty crack on the skull and sees out his days craving vitamin D in a normally sunny island escape. But you don't have to be you don't have to travel to the South Pacific to flirt with cannibalism. As a travel writer, I've had to endure some rather eclectic dishes over the years.